Well, Vladimir Putin still wants the whole of Ukraine's Donbas region in exchange for freezing the front lines elsewhere. That's according to reports of Donald Trump's conversation with President Zelenskyy and other European leaders. And the White House seems to have dropped the idea of a ceasefire while negotiations are taking place. That's a key Kremlin demand which has left Ukrainians flummoxed. So was this the summit that ended in no deal, or will Ukraine still be pressured into a bad deal, which it fears most? This summit may not have been made for peace, but it was definitely made for television. More Love Island than superpower face-off. The guest from Moscow must have pinched himself. As a wanted war criminal, this should have been Vladimir Putin's perp walk in many other countries. But to tread the red carpet in the one country that has the power to rein him in was a gift. The brief display of American military muscle was all part of the show.
President Putin, will you stop killing civilians?
You heard. That kind of shouted question would have got you arrested or worse in Russia. But it didn't spoil the joyride in the beast. Vladimir Putin beaming in the knowledge that he is no longer frozen out by Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Mr. Putin, will you
Press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
In the meeting room, a blizzard of unruly questions and a wince from Putin that may explain why the two later failed to give the press the opportunity to ask any questions.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Let's go!
President of the Russian Federation.
Fast forward after 3 hours of talks, the precise nature of which remain a mystery. The press, Russian and Western, rose to their feet, but did the leaders rise to an occasion billed as historic?
Уважаемый господин президент.
The guest spoke before the host, also unusual, and flattered him relentlessly, including repeating one of Trump's favorite lines, that the war would never have happened if he had been in power.
Я помню, что в 2022
I
году
remember that in 2022, during the last contacts with the previous administration, I tried to convince my former American colleague that we should not let things get to a situation. And today when we hear President Trump say that if I were president, there would be no war, I think that this would actually happen.
He repeated his principal point that the conflict can only end if the root causes are solved. Code for, I don't want Ukraine to be an independent country.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound.
Over to President Trump.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal.
He went on to brief the Ukrainians and NATO partners, but there was no mention of invasion or ceasefire, let alone war crimes. Trump's spit lasted barely 4 minutes, a record shorty for the man who usually likes to weave on and on.
We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
But no thanks from the audience, which was left mystified, and from the Ukrainians, who must have blanched at the flattery as well as the lack of substance about the fate of their nation at war. Putin, the former KGB spy, almost broke into a dance, he was so happy. Flattery had worked on Trump like a Soviet honey trap.
You don't have the cards right now.
Contrast this with Zelensky's Oval Office mauling in February, which set the tone.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
Zelenskyy is due back in this room on Monday. He posted today that he was grateful for the invite and hoped America would use its power to influence the situation. How Alaska will be remembered will depend on the follow-up meetings and the course of the conflict. But the Russian president turned war criminal left Alaska with the ultimate big power compliment, an American fighter escort. Get home safely, Vladimir. Well, a short time ago, I spoke to Robert Wilkie, who served as Veteran Affairs Secretary in Donald Trump's first administration. I asked him about yesterday's summit and his opinion whether the flattery of Donald Trump worked.
Well, I think the answer to that is that I can discern absolutely no progress in terms of getting to an agreement. The Russians are going to always come with flattery and filibustering. I mean, half of the discussion, from what I've been told, was about things that had absolutely nothing to do with the fight in Ukraine. What I came away with was that there's absolutely no progress. The president did talk to European leaders, and I have to say I'm very much in agreement with Keir Starmer, Macron, and van der Linden that if we're going to go down the road on a peace agreement, not only do there need to be security guarantees, but the Ukrainians have to get their children and their prisoners back. And we can't walk out on the Ukrainians the way we did in the 1990s.
But given the fact that America possesses an enormous amount of power, which President Trump has been quite happy to wield since he came back into office, are you disappointed that he didn't wield more of that power in this crucial summit?
I do think that the president does have in his quiver not only the kinetic power, but he does have enormous economic power that he can wield. And I hope that that was made clear to Mr. Putin. But we'll see. I think that meeting on Monday is very important.
You're also a big admirer of Winston Churchill's. I mean,
Yes.
Winston Churchill is surely spinning in his grave at the thought that an indicted war criminal, Vladimir Putin, has been given the red carpet treatment by the leader of the free world.
Well, I don't think Winston would take that position after having to swallow his pride and have to deal with the second greatest mass murderer in history, Joseph Stalin, for many years. And not as tough as the prime minister was, he always said, jaw, jaw is better than war, war. Previous presidents, masters of foreign policy, Richard Nixon, had to sit down with Mao. Yes, there's certain atmospherics that may be unpalatable, and certainly are unpalatable. But no, if you look at the history of the United Kingdom and the United States, we've had to put some of those things aside for larger issues.
Well, on that point then, do you think that the jaw that we saw yesterday, the fawn that we saw yesterday, might actually yield some genuine results that are good for Ukraine?
The president has tried. He's been rebuffed. The previous offers of ceasefire have been met with attacks on Ukrainian civilians. But if you look at what Putin said yesterday, he certainly didn't back off of any of his maximalist demands. And he trotted out the same claptrap about Ukraine being a rogue province of Imperial Russia. What you might look for if Putin actually sits down with Zelenskyy, because if he does that, he refutes 30 years of propaganda on his part that there is no independent government in Kiev. It's just a bunch of breakaway terrorists. So that's also something to look toward.
And finally, I mean, just the image of Putin smiling from ear to ear, almost breaking into a dance. He seemed so happy, being normalized, being allowed back into the Western tent by Donald Trump.
No.
I mean, is that him being delusional, or does he have reason to be that cheerful?
Well, I will say the next time he comes, we should put him in front of the British and American press for a longer time than he was yesterday, when you could see that he was incredibly uncomfortable and wanted out. What is important here is stopping the killing in Ukraine, and I think the best way forward here is an armistice along the lines that exist. Because I will tell my European friends, if you're talking about pushing Russia completely out, then talk to me about how you're going to take Moscow. Right now, we have to stabilize the situation and provide those security guarantees that I certainly agree with Keir Starmer on, that the Europeans and the United States should do. And last thing, I do think that Donald Trump's great contribution to the future of Europe has been to awaken Europe to responsibilities that it has abrogated for so many decades for its own defense.
Robert Wilkie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Well, here in Ukraine, the image of American soldiers kneeling at the foot of Vladimir Putin's plane to roll out the red carpet has been shocking, to say the least. People are worried not only that Russia has been brought out of international isolation, but that America seems intent on forcing Ukraine into giving up land. And a vague promise of security guarantees isn't proving terribly reassuring either. A world away from the front line, I've been talking to people out enjoying a summer's evening here in Lviv.
It's not about peace, it's about just, as say in Ukraine, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So many words.
Yes, words, not deals.
If they only have any possibility, they carry on these bomb attacks. Because we are from Kiev, we live in Kiev usually, but now we are going to UK because we live now here to save our children. And to be honest, I don't believe that something changed in a bomb attack. It's only short break.
Putin wants the war. He wants to destroy Ukraine. So the conditions for a ceasefire wouldn't be good for Ukraine.
Do you think Europe has your back, that they would be able to insist on security guarantees if there is a peace deal?
Yeah, I think Europe wants to help. Yeah, I just don't know if it's enough help.
Well, earlier I spoke to Ukraine's former Deputy Defence Minister, Alina Frolova. I started by asking her what, if anything, had changed after the summit last night.
Well, actually, there is not so much information released now, and we just can guess based on the mainly Trump's word. It seems that nothing was reached as agreement. They actually negotiated to continue negotiations, and which is like one of the positions which always Putin tried to promote.
Trump said afterwards that he and Putin largely agreed on what he called a land swap. But is there relief in Ukraine today that nothing was signed and sealed on that?
We cannot swap Ukrainian land on Ukrainian land, and no one knows exactly what they have been talking about. So and our position was clearly declared by the president of Ukraine and the head of parliament. We said that we are not ready to legally acknowledge any occupied territories to be a Russian one. So from one side, yeah, it's good that there is no some kind of final agreement, but any final agreement cannot be operative without Ukrainian participation in reaching that agreement.
President Zelenskyy has said he's going to Washington, D.C. on Monday. Is that a good sign for Ukraine, or could he yet end up the fall guy with Donald Trump basically washing his hands of the whole thing and saying, you've got to sort this out yourself?
I think it's a positive sign, because it's always better to speak one-to-one than by phone, and to discuss a position before this potential trilateral meeting. So that's, I think it's important, and of course we would like that Europeans also be present at that meeting.
He's also said he's open to a trilateral meeting involving Vladimir Putin as well, but that's fraught with difficulty, isn't it? I mean, Volodymyr Zelenskyy is on a tightrope in these negotiations, isn't he?
Yes, but at the same time we cannot say no, because first of all, we're really interested in peace, yes, this is the initiative of Trump, and it would be a very difficult, yes, if we reject it. So I think that it should be a preconditions to this meeting. We need to understand what positions would be discussed. We need to include the diplomats for preliminary work and work out some at least negotiation path for these trilateral meetings, not just jump in and have everything on the table.
Volodymyr Zelenskyy also said that there were positive signals out of the summit on US security guarantees. Given that the US has ruled out Ukraine joining NATO, what could be the progress on that?
Well, I think that the only realistic thing we can get from Americans now is some kind of very firm obligation to supply weapons and equipment, because we do not expect that there would be troops on the ground. We do not expect that they will allow in this, while the Trump in the office do not allow to join the NATO, which is the most logical thing. So the supplies of required weapons is the only thing they can guarantee us.
You know, Donald Trump was quite clear that if there was no ceasefire from Russia, he would impose severe sanctions. That hasn't happened. Do you see any prospect of that happening?
For now on, no. I think that now everyone will be concentrated speaking and about this trilateral meeting and postponing this decision after the meeting. So that's actually some kind of winning of Putin tactics. But we're speaking about quite a long process and strategic approach, so we'll deal with that.
As of now, we're as far away from peace as ever, aren't we? And we come back to the fact that Putin is the real winner out of last night.
Again, let's look at that as a front line. Yes, the front line is all the time moving, so that's not like an end state where Putin is winning. Yeah, we have some situations in which he is winning, but then strategically, till now, we managed to deal with that. So we'll use all the resources, advocacy, diplomacy, hard power to reach our goal.
Did yesterday bring you any closer to peace at all?
I don't think so.
Alina Frolova, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, the Democrat Mark Begich represented Alaska in the US Senate. He was also the mayor here in Anchorage, and he's with me now. Senator Begich, good to see you here now.
Thank you very much.
Makeshift studio.
I love it.
It's good. It's not bad, is it?
Not bad.
What did you make of yesterday's summit?
Well, I think it was, we had hoped something bigger. When you come to Alaska, it's a big state, so we expect big things to happen. It was a little disappointing because there was not a decision on the ceasefire or what the next step is, and that was somewhat disappointing. I think a lot of people felt like here you are in a state that does, like I said, big things, and it just didn't materialize.
Someone called it a nothing burger.
Yeah.
But so you wanted your state to be represented as one of, as a summit that might actually bring about peace in Ukraine.
Yeah, I think Alaska is in a unique place. We're the crossroads of the world, as you've got here, as the rest of the international press is. It's an international city in many ways. And so we see ourselves, and we're net exporters as a state, so we see ourselves as a kind of a global state, a global city that you're in. And having those two leaders here, I think, is a statement in many ways of what Alaska is. It tries to bring people together and solve problems. But this summit didn't materialize. Maybe they'll be back again, and that will close the deal. It was, I think a lot of people were wondering what's next. And I know there's a big meeting going to happen maybe Monday. But at a certain point, you have to say enough is enough, and Russia, you have to cease fire, move out, and resolve this issue that they caused.
On the other hand, you know all about ice in this state, and Donald Trump was breaking the ice with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Is it not possible to argue that actually just breaking that ice and starting a conversation might in the end actually yield some results which Ukraine might find acceptable?
Maybe. And I say this because I think it's important that they did have this conversation. They should have had this conversation months ago. As soon as he came into office, as he stated that this was one of his top priorities when he was running for election to the presidency. The fact that Russia has continued to buy time, which in result has had major impact to Ukraine. I think we as a country can step to the plate. I think the president has the capacity to do that, create a ceasefire, and then resolve this issue once and for all. So breaking the ice in a place that, today doesn't have any ice is great, but it is about what are you going to do to tell Russia, the aggressor in this situation, that enough is enough and it's time to stop the war.
And Putin is an indicted war criminal. There are many Alaskans I spoke to who were demonstrating in the last few days who were deeply ashamed that he was welcomed onto the red carpet in this state.
Yeah, I think, you had to do something, to get Putin at the table. This did it. If Alaska is that point that can do that, I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, Putin has to make the decision here and get this war over with. What's frustrating to me as an American, you hear us always say we have immense power. The presidency has immense power.
And you're wielding it in very different ways, aren't you, at the moment under Donald Trump?
Yes. And
is the America under Trump fundamentally different to previous Americas in the way it uses its power?
No question about it. I mean, today or yesterday would have been a great opportunity to use that power to close this war off, and it had not occurred.
But then there are many people in Ukraine who say President Biden could have used more power, given us more weapons to actually win this war and not just stay above
water. Well, if you remember what was happening before this new president came in, I mean, Russia was borrowing ammo from North Korea. They had to get drones from Iran because they were getting squeezed hard. And now we're in the situation where they're buying time and using it to their advantage. But under the last presidency, it was squeezed down pretty good. And, the president came in, the new President Trump, should have closed the deal within very quick order. But time has been given literally to Russia to do a lot of things that have caused enormous harm to Ukraine.
Senator Mark Begich, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.